I'm very excited today. We have Juniper and Ivy in the house. Ooh la la, I think I have to say to that. Very excited to have Nick with us. Nick Gergen, I hope I'm pronouncing that. I forgot to ask. Is Nick, what is your title there? Because you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah. First off, you did pronounce my last name right. Thank you. I am the beverage manager as well as the assistant general manager here.
And sommelier.
And sommelier, yeah.
That's where I was going. So I think most of us know, or most people know where Juniper and Ivy. Where are you guys located? Just as a reminder.
We are in Little Italy, in between Juniper and Ivy Street on Kettner Boulevard.
And it's just such a beautiful. I know I can't remember that address. It's just such a beautiful place.
Thank you.
I love going there, and you were saying that there's been a little bit of updating going on.
Yeah, we aside from the private dining room, which you can see behind me, we've been working on that for when we are able to have private groups and indoor dining. We've renovated this a little bit. We've also taken the opportunity with not being able to bring guests inside to resand all of our wood surfaces, our tables, and everything. So really giving the restaurant a facelift since we haven't been able to have guests indoors.
That's great, but you're still doing some. Are you still doing to go?
We're doing to go as well as in-person outdoor dining. So we have a small little section of patio that has always been attached to the restaurant. And we also build a dining room each night of service in our parking lot as well.
Very nice. So you're managing to keep some people employed as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the most exciting thing. That's why we add this as our start to Aperitivo Happy Hour, because we want to make sure we're still supporting our restaurants when we can until we can open in full and be safe again. So I really appreciate you joining us today. And you've got a lovely cocktail to tell us about.
Yeah, so this cocktail was created by my lead bartender, Keenan Anaya. It's called the Western Sunrise. It features Legion Bourbon Whiskey, which is a collaboration between the master distiller Jim Beam, as well as the master distiller or master blender, as it is now, at Suntory in Japan. Both of which are under the same umbrella from the company. They got together, and as I understand, it was a difficult process since the master blender from Suntory does not speak any English. So there was a lot of pointing and grunting and those sorts of interactions. But so that was the main pretense for the cocktail, was to create kind of a spirit forward cocktail with this whiskey. So Keenan thought it would be a fun idea to utilize ingredients that were only found in Japan as well as the US and specifically Kentucky. So we have a little yuzu liqueur. The producer's name is Yuzuri. Yuzus are very bright, kind of lemon-like citrus. They grow in Japan. And the rest of the cocktail is based with Genepi, which is the only asterisk in the cocktail. That one is found kind of all throughout the world. And then sorghum syrup. Sorghum's kind of like a wheat, and they press a juice out of it, kind of like they do sugarcane. Turn it into a syrup from there, and we dilute the syrup a little bit because the flavor is quite intense. And then we add a little black walnut bitters as well.
So. Wow. So there's a lot of stuff in this drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited to have this drink here. I have a different drink, but I'm going to try that drink the next time I get there. I like on your note that you said it lasts a day or something, so you can go and pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, we are selling it from our takeout platform, which is available on our website. We have batches of 4, so you can have a cocktail over the course of 4 days, or 4 cocktails in a day, however you're feeling that
however you're feeling. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And David, back to you.
All right, so cheers everyone. Happy Aperitivo. Happy beginning of the weekend for some of you, and not quite the weekend for the rest of us. So Nick, thanks for joining us. That does sound like it has lots of Kentucky in it. So makes me want to have that drink, I gotta say.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, the whole point of this, we want to make sure that you guys know who you can patronize when you're tired of cooking. Yeah, for yourselves. You know where to go. Okay, thanks. Well, listen, everyone, thank you for coming again. And it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome our guest, Emily Fons. Emily, hello.
Whoops, hi.
Yeah, there you go.
I've done this before, I promise.
Yeah,
Hi,
course.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great to have you virtually with us. From Milwaukee, I just learned that you live in Milwaukee, where it's just a little bit colder than San Diego, right? It's been a snowy year for you there, for sure. But I think everyone probably knows that's with us that, you know, Emily was meant to be with us last spring for Barber of Seville. And luckily, we're able to bring her back, as well as everyone except for one, but almost the entire cast that we originally had, we're able to bring back together. And it's a phenomenal cast. And she'll be joining us for our drive-in Barber of Seville not too long from now. So that's actually really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I'll be road tripping out. So
oh, good.
Great.
Yeah. By that time, you should probably be free of snow.
Well, not with my luck.
Right, exactly. No, and knowing Milwaukee, I was just sharing with Emily that I was a resident artist with the opera company in Milwaukee as a young singer, and was there doing a tour really around the state of the entire state of Wisconsin, an educational outreach tour. And for some reason, they decided the best time to do that was mid-January through March. Like, why? I was living in Dallas at the time, and I grew up in the Midwest, and I loved snow. So it was always like, oh, good, I'm going to get some snow. But then I'd be like, okay, I've had enough snow. It's like enough of the Milwaukee snow. But Milwaukee is a great city, and you are from Wisconsin, correct?
Yep, I grew up in Milwaukee.
You did grow up there. Oh,
yep.
So you're home, which is great.
Yeah, it's been great to be home.
Where did you go to school? Where did you study?
It's more of a question of where didn't I? I was one of those kids who didn't really figure it out in a concise manner.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I did. I went to Syracuse University for 1 week. My parents loved that. That worked out well. And then I came home, and my mom teaches at this private college in Wisconsin Lutheran College. She's a voice teacher, actually. And she said, oh, why don't you just come here for a semester and at least get some credits? And, you know, nobody wants to go to school where their mom teaches. And, you know, so I did that. And then I left there. Then I did 2 years at UW Milwaukee. Then I transferred and finished my bachelor's degree. We're still in my bachelor's degree at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. And then I did my master's degree at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. So, you know, that little diagram they always show of success, where it's usually just like a giant knot before it kind of straightens out. That knot is very memorable.
You are the example of that, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I tell people a lot that are in the arts that, you know, most of us are on a circuitous path. And when we're on it, it feels kind of crazy. It's like, what am I doing? And then when you look backwards, it's like, oh yeah, that's actually the path I was supposed to take. So it makes sense, right?
For
so
sure.
I think, you know, none of that is a mistake. So clearly you grew up in a musical family. Your mom was a voice teacher.
Yep.
And your father?
Well, he's an attorney, but actually they met when they were both singing opera, which is kind of crazy. So my mom was singing, you know, some bigger roles at Milwaukee Opera Theater when it existed. It doesn't exist anymore. Back in the late 70s, I think. And my dad had just gotten out of the Army and it was starting law school at Marquette. And he was singing for fun in the chorus, and someone at the company introduced them, and there you have it.
Amazing. That's amazing. So music clearly was in your house when you were growing up, right?
Yeah, it was. You know, something I've always appreciated is that my parents never pushed. They never said you need to do this. I mean, I took piano lessons, and you know, I was the typical kid. I conveniently had headaches and stomach aches on piano lesson days, and you know, knew all the ways to, if you ask enough questions, the time goes by quickly and you don't actually have to play your scales, you know, all that. So I was the typical kid in that way. But they did, you know, they gave us a great musical foundation by encouraging us to have piano lessons. I took clarinet lessons, and my mom would teach. So a lot of my early memories of singing were hearing her students through the closed dining room door, because, you know, she'd be teaching in the living room by the piano, and I just I would hear John Jacob Niles floating, through the door toward me. So it was never anything strange. Yes, it was always present.
Yeah. And did you study voice as a child, or did you wait later to study voice?
I waited. Yeah, I needed to get the cheerleading and all of those things out of the way before I was ready to do that. But I started taking voice lessons when I was 16 in high school.
So interesting. You've a very similar kind of background. I grew up in a house my mother was a piano teacher. So I heard piano coming from her music studio. And she was my piano teacher.
Oh, wow.
Not an easy thing, right? Like you never went. So that only actually lasted about a year and a half. And maybe
sounds right.
Less than that, right? And I would she had this little sand timer that she would turn over on the piano when I had to practice for 30 minutes. And I would sit there and cry. And it's 30 minutes, right? And it's because my mom was my piano teacher. So, and I didn't study singing until college. I mean, I was in choir and band and theater and everything else, but I didn't hit the studying part until college. So I think that's very interesting. And you have in my opinion, a very clear, definable technique and style of singing. And you're very unique. You're clearly a specialist in bel canto. I think we can say that, right? You are a Rossini singer. You sing a lot of Mozart. You do a lot of pants rolls. You have tons of coloratura in your voice, and you also sing Baroque music beautifully. So how did that develop? When did you know that was the direction you were going to take? How did all of that come to you?
Well, I would say, first of all, my first kind of vocal love was the classic movie musicals. So I did a lot of singing of Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Loewe, just that kind of music. And I think that music is so good for young singers because it's not too rangy. It's really melodic. And I was fortunate to have teachers who my first voice teacher just made singing joyful, and so I didn't start out in my head. I had to earn that, but it really was a gift to have somebody just offer me this beautiful music to sing with joy and just encourage me. So I did a lot of just melodic singing, and I've always loved early music. There's just something about the clarity of it that really connects with me. I feel like I can hear all the parts moving, and the ways the harmonies progress, I find so satisfying. And so I've always just connected with early music. And my voice teacher, who I've actually worked with since I was 19, which is crazy. We will have worked together for 19 years this year.
Wow.
And I've worked with other teachers, you go to school, you work with other people. And I've always found that no teacher wants to hurt you. They all want to help you. And I really have felt like I have learned something from everyone. But Connie Haas, who's my teacher since I was 19, she teaches from an Alexander technique perspective. And what that means for anyone who doesn't know is just a lot of body awareness and taking advantage of what your body does naturally and kind of harnessing the power of that. And I find, again, there's kind of a clarity when you're thinking of yourself as not to take the art away from it, but when you're thinking of yourself as a very mechanical, piece of equipment in a way that functions best one way. And you kind of want to get out of the way and let that happen. I think that kind of clarity that kind of singing produces goes along well with Handel and Mozart and Rossini. So I've just always kind of had an affinity. Well, first of all, I always say that I'm a second soprano. You know what I mean? I think most women are, we're just kind of somewhere in the middle, and at some point we have to choose. And so I've always found that Handel, Mozart, Rossini kind of fits that too. Yep. That kind of, I don't really want to hang out too high. I don't want to hang out too low. And as far as the coloratura, that's, I think we all have something that we naturally do well, And at some point you do have to understand why you do it naturally well, and then find the finesse and the technique behind it. Because as you get older, you know, you can't take anything for granted. And I think we all know that in all aspects of our life. The stuff that was really easy at one time, you wake up one day and you're like, oh, that's not happening so easily anymore. So I've always enjoyed singing coloratura. It always has been relatively easy, but it's also something I work incredibly hard at to understand why it has been easy and how I can keep it easy. So, yeah.
Great answer. Wow. A lot in that answer. So, you know, we think of when you're playing a piano, you're making music, but the instrument is outside of your body. The piano is, you're playing it, violin, same. But what you were just talking about, like, we can't get away from the fact that we have to be technical in some ways about the mechanism of the voice is inside of you, right? So Alexander technique is great for that, because you're really trying to be aware of your body, which is separate and apart from you then trying to be musical and interpretive and all of that. Really interesting. So we talked about Baroque music. I want to play an example of you singing some Baroque music. And this is the example from your website. So this is Cesti, who's a very early composer, and it's, what's the opera? It's L'Orantea, right? So tell us a little bit about this.
So this was my first time working with Haymarket Opera Company, which is a early music company in Chicago. And it, you know, it's always really fun to work in a specialized way with people who, you know, that is their passion. And so we did a production of L'Orantea, a queen who says she's not going to fall in love, you know, and of course she does. And yeah, so that's kind of how that goes.
And this is early Baroque, right?
Yeah, this is very early. Yeah. So and we did the production we did stylized Baroque gesture too. So there are certain kind of hand movements you use or positions you strike when you talk about certain things like love, or, you know, if you're saying, you know, like I can't, you know, you'll do something like this, or, you know, there's the signs for love or things like that. So, and actually I found that as it's strange at first, but when you start to get the hang of it, it actually is really a beautiful way to tell a story.
Oh, I love it. I'd love to have seen the production. So this is a video that is just a concert sort of presentation of this one particular moment in the opera, but I found it incredibly beautiful and also showing your affinity for Baroque music. So let's, Joey, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh,
So beautiful, really beautiful. And I really wanted people to hear this because I think people don't realize how much beautiful melody there is in Baroque music, right? Um, and you sing beautifully legato. I mean, your legato is perfect in that. So we've talked with this group a lot about legato and about what it means for a singer and singing through the vowel and delaying the consonant. And but what I found interesting watching that is, if you just look at the cello there, the continuo, probably gamba is what he's playing, but the bow is what draws the notes together. So he has a bow. The harpsichord, there are no sustaining pedals, so that's fingers. It's connecting note to make legato. But what we have as singers is we have vowels. We have sound that goes, and the vowels and the consonants break them up. So once again, when you sing small notes in the passages, they have equal spin as the long notes, which is what I hear.
Hopefully.
You do. And not everybody does that, particularly in Baroque music, because a lot of people press on the sound and straighten it out, right?
Yeah.
And you sang it with this very beautiful continuing spin and line. It's very gorgeous. So
Thank you, David.
yeah, that I hope that was a good experience for you to do that. I'm sure it was, right? I don't know Haymarket Opera, but tell me
Very much. Well, and Jory, who was playing the harpsichord, Jory Vinicourt,
Yeah.
I've known him for a while. He actually writes all my ornaments for me anytime I do any Baroque singing. So we've known each other a long time, and it's just, I just find there's Baroque specialists they have very high standards.
Yeah.
and they have very specific ways that they believe that things should be done. But I think if you can get on the same page, it can be some really stunning music making. And actually the melodies, Handel's Largo arias, there's, pretty much one in every opera, I think are hands down the most beautiful pieces ever written. I just, I think, yeah. And I think sometimes we fall for the idea that we have to sing differently when we sing Baroque music as singers. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I mean, I think that that if you follow the harmonies and the melodic line and the text, I think that we don't have to, make too many adjustments.
Right. Pressing, which a lot of people do when they
Yeah.
So you just talked about ornaments. I'm not sure everyone's aware of what we do as singers when we're singing Baroque music. When you're singing, sometimes you do it a little bit in Mozart, depending upon the singer and the production. And but in Baroque music, you get to ornament. So tell us about that.
Yeah, Baroque music and bel canto music. So Barber of Seville, definitely there's some ornamenting too. But basically in Baroque music, all arias or pieces that you sing by yourself are going to be set up in an A-B-A format. So you hear the main part of the aria once, the A section. Then you hear a B section, which is different, usually in tempo and attitude or emotion than the A section. And then you go back and sing the A section again. And that's when you get to have a little bit of fun and add your own spin on it and add some ornaments, what we call ornaments, or embellishments, basically to, you keep the line the same, but you add lots of little doodly-doos all over the place. And Jory, who was at the harpsichord, the piano instrument, one of the things he does really well is write ornaments. And I've always said I can sing better ornaments than I can write. So I don't know why I would bother writing my own, because it doesn't really just do justice to the music or my singing, I think. So Jory writes them for me.
Well, and especially if it's somebody who really knows your voice, because the point of an ornament is to show off your
Right.
It really is intended to be kind of showing off a little bit. And it's like, what are your special skills? Like Beverly Sills used to write these ornaments that just were stratospherically high because that's, what she did, right? And so knowing your voice, having somebody who can really showcase that is great. So you went to college in the Midwest, around a lot of places, little time in Syracuse, but went to college in the Midwest. You were in the Ryan Center at some point, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when did that happen, and tell us about that and what that meant for your career?
Sure. So my first young artist program was with Indianapolis Opera, and that was kind of a shorter one too, like you did with the Florentine. We weren't there year round, and so I did that. And then And that was one of the load up the van, wear silly costumes and sing to 5-year-olds 3 times a day. And everybody does one of those, and that's good. We do that. And then after that, I did the Santa Fe Opera Young Artist Program. And that's kind of where I got put in touch with the people from the Lyric. So they were familiar with me. And I grew up, in high school, I would go see shows at the Lyric. My parents would take us. And so it was kind of a dream come true to be on the other side of that. It's such a beautiful theater. It's just, stunning. And it's a big theater. You're not going to sing in many bigger places than that. So I think if you get used to that as a young artist, it's a good thing. And it definitely was the boost I needed to have a professional career. There's just no way around that. I know a lot of people have different paths, but for me, it was pretty traditional in terms of doing a young artist program, getting some exposure, signing with an agent. Then Michael Benchitrit, who's been my agent since 2011, we signed when I was at the Ryan Center. And, it was also, and Santa Fe and the Ryan Center were places where you're just around really high quality singing, and you're around the process of opera.
Yeah.
And that's so huge as a young person too. You don't know anything, and how can you, until you're there seeing it and doing it. And it's also a really important time to learn how to work with other people, because that's what we do, right? We work, opera is a team effort, and you have so many coachings, when you work with pianists to prepare music, you work with so many different people as a young artist that it can be really overwhelming, and you can lose your sense of what makes sense and what works for you, because you just get so much feedback and so many opinions. So I think one of the great things about it is it gives you the opportunity to learn how to use vocabulary that's useful for yourself when you're working with other people, and how to take something good from every interaction, even if it's a person you wouldn't maybe choose to work with in the future. And you meet the people that you will choose to work with in the future, that are kind of going to be there for you as you learn roles for the first time and as you go back and prepare things. So I think kind of becoming part of the opera community, finding the people that will always be the people I go to prepare music, and then just seeing how opera works, how it's done, and where I fit in that, and then signing with a manager. That's kind of everything that happens.
So those of you that are, I'm sure most of you know, but the Ryan Center is Chicago, right? So it's Chicago Lyric, one of the bigger programs, more established programs, and as Emily was just saying, kind of embedded in this big machine of opera. So while you're there, clearly good coaching, teaching, all of the things, but what kind of stage experience did they provide for you? Did you get to do roles while you were there?
Yeah, a lot, really a lot. Roles, so small roles and covers of very big roles. And I mean, in my second year, I was lucky enough, they cast me as Niklaus. So that, I really got a big role while I was still a young artist. And it was Matthew Polenzani's first Hoffman, and James Morris was singing the villains.
I saw this.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I didn't know that you were in that. That was a great production.
Yeah, it was, so that was, Aaron Wall. And, it was a huge opportunity, and everyone was so kind and supportive, and that's been my experience in this industry, is that people are kind and supportive, and maybe I'm fortunate in that, but yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So how long were you there?
Just 2 years.
Okay, that's great. So you're coming back here, you're singing Rossini. You've done quite a bit of Rossini. Yeah, I think you've sung in the production that we had planned.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the one with the chickens, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our audience is not going to get to see the chickens. I don't think. Maybe we can figure out a way to work some of that into it. We are not able to use the set because there's no way to fly things in and out, and so we're building kind of a new set. But the costumes we will use, and hopefully we'll keep some of the fun energy of it, because the reason I liked the production is it was funny, and there's a lot of barbers that aren't so funny. And so you've sung Rosina before. Oh, Joan just said, Joan, who's our director of production, just put in the top, no chickens. Okay, well, everyone's going to have to imagine some chickens somewhere on the stage, because they're not going to be there. So tell us about your experience with this particular, well, tell us about Rosina, if you want to add anything, but also this production that you liked, or any little tidbit you want to give us.
Yeah, well, I think, anytime you take on a kind of like, one of the bigger, well-known opera characters, it's a little bit intimidating. And kind of for the reason that we were talking about with going back to the ornaments, people have in their head their favorite version, or, it's been recorded so many times that people really have an idea of how they want it to be. And as a singer, you've got to figure that out for yourself. And that was a little bit of a bumpy road for me, I'm not going to lie. I find Rossini really challenging in ways that Handel and Mozart are not for me. It's a very different animal. Mm-hmm. And Rosina as a character, she's so much fun. She's so, spontaneous and fiery. But I think the older I get, the more I have to remember how young she is. So there's always that, I have to keep reminding myself, she's supposed to be a teenager, like, be a little easier on yourself, Emily. It's just, we start to take it too seriously, I think, when it gets imbued with this, it's the Barber of Seville and everybody wants to hear Una voce poco fa and so you have to kind of keep the spirit of newness and youth and fun in it. And I love the music of Barber of Seville. It's one of those things where you can't kind of help but laugh and smile when you hear it. No matter what context you've heard it in, you hear it and it's unmistakably Barber of Seville. Everybody knows Figaro, Figaro, and everybody knows the overture and all of that. And the buffo roles, you're basically the only woman except for Berta. And, depending on the production, she's not around that much. The guys are really funny. They really have opportunities to be funny. And I think picking up on some of that energy, and that's one of the things I've always loved about Rosina, is you kind of are the only gal around, and you have this kind of crazy boy energy to to be a part of. And I've always found that really fun. And I've, every time I sing it, I've sung it a couple times, I'm always tweaking it, changing things, playing around with what I want to do. And I'm sure that's how it will always be. Sure. And I do actually have it was a kind of a light bulb moment for me, something that just happened with one of the students I teach for San Diego Opera, actually. Yeah. So I don't, probably people don't know, but I teach two young ladies, a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old, remotely for the opera. We do voice lessons. And I was having a session with the 15-year-old. And sometimes we don't even end up doing that much singing because she can talk like a teenager and, she just goes, but she writes poetry and she's fascinating. And she's, I love everything about her. And she was talking a mile a minute about, she was feeling like one of her teachers was being disrespectful to her and it was making her semester terrible. She was getting really riled up. And she said to me, Emily, she's like, one of my friends said to me, Samira, you are like the sweetest girl, but if someone presses your buttons the wrong way, you turn into a little devil. And I said to her, Samira, hold on. I said, that's literally the exact text of this aria I'm singing in Una voce poco fa. And to hear it out of the mouth of a 15-year-old at 100 miles an hour, everything made sense all of a sudden. I thought, that's who Rosina is.
Well, and also that's why the aria has so much coloratura in it, right? It's like, no wonder. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great discovery, right?
Yeah, it really was. And this production that we're not doing, but that we're kind of stealing costumes from, what I really liked about it was how colorful it was.
Right.
I just thought it hit you, bam, right away. Like, this is going to be fun. Yeah. It just, yeah.
So those of you that are listening and attended Bohème know some of the challenges we had to overcome with Bohème in terms of spacing. And Emily, I don't know if you've been informed yet, but we're going to have to deal with those challenges again because we are an AGMA company. And so you will have your own 120 square feet of space that no one else can really encroach in on. But we have the most brilliant director, Katura Stikhan. I don't know if you know Katura.
Yeah, she's amazing.
And she really used space to her advantage, distance to her advantage in telling stories for Bohème. And so that's the reason we brought her back for this. So she will keep that world of bright color and poppiness and everything, but I'm sure she'll find a way to use distance as either a metaphor or a way to tell the story that you would not understand before. But I will give everyone a little teaser that we're hopefully, Joan, I think it's okay if I say this, going to be playing up the drive-in kind of aspect. So there might be some kind of drive-in, like the chorus might be in some vintage cars in front of the stage, maybe. So I'm giving a little bit away here. We got to still work all that out. But so it's going to be fun. It's going to be very, very fun. So I'm going to hear another video. I don't have a Rossini video, but you sing a lot of Mozart also. And you sung Mozart for us. You sang Cherubino last. You sung 2 Mozart for us. Zerlina and Cherubino, right? But I found an aria that is a Mozart aria that has a lot of coloratura that you did recently in a recital, and I think we'll play that. So Parto Parto, which, by the way, the final section of this, I've never heard anyone sing faster. I was like, oh my God, that's a fast tempo, which is kind of amazing. So this was not too long ago that you did this, but let's listen to this. Let's talk about it afterwards, and then we'll talk about more stuff. So Joey, video number 2.
Ritorna in pace, sormo
the wind at the end. That's amazing. Actually, you know what's interesting? I can see Alexander Technique in your singing now. I really can. Like,
Oh, well, that's
and it's good. I mean, because you're so still and kind of open, and Alexander Technique's a lot of openness too, right? So you're really, your body's very open in that last section. So so that's kind of a little bit of the world. It's not the same spirit, of course, because Rosina is very funny, but the rapid singing and all of that is kind of what people are going to hear a little bit when they hear you. So bravo, that's great. When did you do that? When was that concert in Fort Worth?
um
Pre-COVID, clearly, because there was an audience, right?
yeah, 2017.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the past year, because yeah. So, you know, we were the first, I don't know if you know this, we were the first company in the country to have to actually postpone a production due to COVID. Because we had do you know who Beth Morrison is?
Yeah.
She's a producer in Opera New York.
Yep.
We had a Beth Morrison piece that we were presenting. So it had been rehearsed in New York, and the Brooklyn Youth Chorus was a big part of it.
Oh.
And we already had the sets in the theater. It had all been rehearsed in New York. The cast and the children were supposed to come the next day. And on Monday, the 10th, I think that's right, 9th or 10th, 9th of March, we got a call saying the children weren't coming because the parents and the board members were like, it's too scary. And by the end of that week, everyone was working from home. It was just like this amazing, you know, the whole world changed in a week, right? So for you, you had us lined up, but you had probably a ton of stuff lined up this year, right?
Yeah.
And it all sort of went away, right?
All of it. Yep.
Every bit of it. Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, you can be honest, you don't have to disclose anything, but you know, we tried very hard to not cancel anything. We haven't canceled anything yet, and tried to postpone, you know, and keep the value of the contracts as much as possible. But I think a lot of companies just were like, we're gonna claim force majeure, and this contract's gone. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you had to deal with some of that, right?
Yeah, a lot of it. It was really scary. And I'll be honest, if it weren't for the government programs that opened up to artists, the pandemic unemployment assistance,
Yeah.
I would have been in real trouble. And I was a person who was, I mean, and thank goodness, very wise. I made very, sound financial decisions. I had an emergency savings account, all of that. But when you're looking at over a year worth of income loss, and it's not just this year, this plays out 2, 3, 4 years down the road for a lot of us in terms of things getting rescheduled or the value of the contract going down, or things like that. So yeah, if it weren't for if it weren't for government programs made available to artists, it would have been very, very bad for me.
Yeah, and you are actually, an established artist now. So, it's I was one of the things I was sort of struck by judging this competition last weekend. It's a competition that's in Pasadena, and they give good prizes, and they always have people. The winners I've judged it twice now. They're doing small. They come through the Lindemann program or Ryan Center or Adler Fellows at San Francisco. So they're kind of at that level, and they've sung principal roles with small companies. And every person's resume stopped at 2019. It was just like done, right? And it was virtual, so the singers had to make recordings, and people were making recordings with a soundtrack of a piano in their kitchen. And I was like, wow, that is the world and especially for young singers who were just about to claw their way up. It's pretty terrifying, and it's been hard for us, but I just thinking about that knock-on effect. We were able to keep going because of PPP. We haven't had to lay anyone off or furlough any staff. So yeah, it's been great. And as I said, it was really important for me to say, let's keep the contract, help artists financially if we can during the period that they thought they were going to get cash from us, but keep them in the future. So we haven't had to cancel anything yet, but
and That is so, I can't tell you how appreciated that is. And for everybody listening, just to know how much it means to artists when companies found a way to show us that they were going to stick with us in a way, you know, and help us in the short term the way they could. And in the long, I mean, it really, it was, it made a huge difference. And I think all of us feel very loyal to the companies that fought so hard to help us.
Good. Well, thank you. Yeah, I have to say, doing the Bohème was a great experience for all of us because, you know, we were like, well, we should try. You know, I mean, we're an opera company. Because I was actually asked by some people, you know, board members and donors, why take the risk? And I was like, well, because we have to try, and if we can't figure out how to do it without keeping it safe, then we can't do it. But we should at least give it a shot, right? And the Bohème was a great success. So I'm sure that Barber is going to be equally a great success. So you were talking about teaching. Tell us, have you taught before? Do you teach? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have been teaching for us. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how that came about. I think John contacted you, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the last time, so it's important to me every time I work for a company, no matter where I am, to try to be available to their education department, because I know that it's difficult work, and that when artists make themselves available, it helps just a little bit. And so I worked with John a little bit. The last time I was in San Diego, I went to, after the show, after Marriage of Figaro, I went to the La Maestra school where some of the students had seen the show, and I got to meet with them, and that was really wonderful, and see all the work that La Maestra does in the community. And so it had always been the plan that I would find some way to help out again when I was in town. And then when things got canceled, John said, I love John. I don't know if everybody knows him. He's incredible. He said, well, let's not just cut our losses. He's like, let's find a way to keep you involved, and maybe we can do something. So he said, if I found you some students who would want to do Zoom lessons, would you be interested? And I said, yeah, why not? And I have to say, it's been absolutely incredible for me, because the two young ladies I teach didn't have any musical education.
Wow.
And when you are teaching voice lessons to someone who can't read music, who is bilingual, is not familiar with classical music, it has very much not come from the story that I told you about where I came from.
Yeah.
You have to be very open-minded and creative and patient, and let them drive the process very much. Mm-hmm. And for instance, Cynthia, who's 13, she's an 8th grader, she sings mariachi music. I literally did not know a single mariachi song, didn't know anything about mariachi music. I mean, I'd heard it, you know, but I no one had ever explained to me what they loved about it. I've never heard the text on any of that. And so much of this music I can't even find the sheet music, right. You know? So Cynthia and I will meet, and the opera was amazing. Actually, I have it right here. I have this little portable keyboard and I take it with me on gigs. John made sure both Cynthia and Samira got a matching keyboard to mine. So it started out by putting stickers on the piano keys and labeling them so they would start to learn note names.
Oh, cool.
And so we worked a little bit on that. And I don't even know when I first started working with them, but the fact that now when I talk to Cynthia, I can say, no, it's not that A, it's an octave lower. Or I can use vocabulary I never would have dreamed that I would be able to use. And she sent me a question yesterday. She said, I have a question about vibrato. Ah. And she sent me a video of a singer on TikTok singing with some vibrato. And so now we meet every week. She sings mariachi for me. I have the translation. I make sure I know what she's singing, and I just help her be the best mariachi singer she can be.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's not what I thought I would be doing, but I'm so glad it is what I'm doing, because I've learned so much by working with her. And Samira loves Taylor Swift, and she loves poetry, and she loves pop music that's an octave too low for her. And, working with them to understand what they love about it and help them explore that, and just and have more musical language available to them, is just so great. I mean, it really, seeing the light bulb moments and the things, and the thing is, it's more than that. They share with me, really, they let me, they're both from very different cultures. Samira is Muslim and her mom is Somali American. Cynthia's family is bilingual. Her grandma is still in Mexico. And they welcomed me as a Zoom teacher they've never met, into their worlds, and have very much shared parts of their stories with me. And, you know, I've always felt that my voice teachers are part therapist, you know, that I share so much about my life with my voice teacher and things that I would never share with other people. And so I do know that it's this special relationship you form. And I just couldn't be more grateful that they both trust me with their time and with their voices. And it's been incredibly rewarding. That's all. I mean, it's just beautiful.
That is such a great story. It's so moving. And, you know, it also points up the power of the diversity of our community, you know, and we're trying to do what we can. And we sort of scratched the surface of our relationship with the Hispanic community, but we've not touched so much more of the diversity of the community. And I think one of the things that all cultures have in common is that they express stories through music. So every culture can really find their home in opera if we find the way, because that's what opera is telling stories through music, right?
Exactly.
And every culture uses a voice to express stories. So that, I'm so glad I asked you to talk about that, because that's incredibly moving to hear. And I'm glad that, I'm so glad you gave yourself to this, but I'm also glad that we created something that you feel is satisfying to you individually. So we're going to hear one more video, but before we do that, I want to hear what's coming up. When are you going to be back in the theater? You're going to be with us outdoors, but when do you think you're going to be back inside? It looks like the spring of next year is what everybody seems to think. Is that
I was going to say, I think probably March of 2022.
Yeah, but do you have some big stuff on the pipeline, I hope?
Yeah. some things I'm very, some things I can't probably say, but I'm going back to Japan next March. I'll be back in Tokyo for something. And
Excellent.
Again, I just feel so honored that I have that connection, because that's also been, I never thought I would go to Japan, you know, and it's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, you know, your career was rising, and it will just continue to, I'm sure. We had a good conversation with our Aida last week, 2 weeks ago, the last time we did this, Michelle Bradley. I don't know if you know that name. She's was a Lindemann young artist. She sang an Aida for us last year, and she had, I mean, the Met was lined up for her, San Francisco, LA, everything, and it all went away. But again, same thing with, I'm hearing from you, there's promise now. So at least for both of you, it feels like your careers are going to continue if you can just survive until next year, right? So I want to end with, we'll probably have a little time for questions, but I want to end with going back to what you said at the beginning about learning to sing really through sort of music theater standards. Now, this is not a music theater standard, but it's an old American song, and it's Beautiful Dreamer that you sang in Madison Opera. And the reason I like this so much is, I just used to love Marilyn Horne singing this. Do you remember like the recordings of Marilyn Horne singing Beautiful Dreamer?
For sure.
Yeah, and so I think this is beautiful. And so you did this as a concert with Madison. Was this a virtual concert?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this happened post-COVID. It was a way to Madison Opera, your home state, to let you engage with their audience. So Joey, let's listen to the last video. Brava. So beautiful. It's such a beautiful tune, right?
Oh, I
It's
know. I love
really
Stephen Foster.
Yeah. And just let it be simple and be what it is. So brava. We are actually at 5:30, and I think it's best to end with that in our minds. And thank you for your lovely message that you wrote, Emily. We can't wait to have you back, and you are becoming part of our family, which I hope you feel, and we really look forward to having you back.
Thank you very much.
All
I
right.
can't wait. Yeah.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. Bye,
Of course.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.